Welcome to the AM News. Details now. The minority in Parliament has launched a scathing attack on the president, accusing him of overstepping his bounds by intervening in the NCA's decision to shut down radio stations. They claim this move is a brazen assault on the authority of the independent constitutional body. There was a shock and panic when the Ministry of Communications announced their sudden shutdown. But just when it seemed like the plug was about to be pulled on these stations, President Mahama stepped in with a lifeline, a 30-day amnesty to pay their fees and get back on air. So the minority in Parliament was quick to cry foul, accusing government of heavy-handedness and political witch hunting. James Aveji is on that beat and reports.
The Minister for Communications, Sam George, and his urgent statement on the floor of the House ruled out any form of political witch hunt in the closure of the 62 radio stations. According to him, these radio stations have engaged in varied infractions ranging from operating without licenses and some operating with expired licenses.
Group 1, 28 FM radio stations who are currently operating with expired authorizations. Despite the NCA instructing these stations to cease operations in 2024, several of these stations have continued broadcasting unlawfully. These actions constitute a violation of Section 2.4 of the Electronic Communications Act 2008. Group 2, 14 FM stations, which were issued notices of revocation for failure to establish operations within the required 2-year period following the grant of their authorizations. These stations later requested technical inspections but have not completed the process and have continued to broadcast. Group 3, 13 FM stations which applied for authorization to continue operating and have been issued provisional authorization but have not settled the provisional authorization fees in full. The last group of stations that we took action on this morning are 7 FM stations who have paid their provisional authorization fees but have not yet received final authorization in fulfillment of the technical and regulatory requirements under Regulation 54 of LI 1911.
He then made the big announcement that the President, John Mahama, has directed that all of these stations be given a 30-day amnesty to correct these infractions.
Mr. Speaker, a few minutes ago, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the President, directed that the Ministry of Communications, Digital Technology and Innovation work with the regulator, the NCA, to allow all the affected radio stations some additional time to correct the identified breaches within a defined time frame. Those who fail to do so shall have their authorizations formally revoked under the law. In line with this directive from His Excellency the President, the Ministry and the NCA have granted a further 30-day grace period to all defaulting entities.
The matter then degenerated into a political conversation. The minority leader, Afenyo-Markin, for instance, dug into the archives of Parliament and pulled out the position of the now communications minister, who was then a ranking member on the communications committee's position on the same issue when it came up under the previous government. He established strongly that some of these stations, for instance, the Wontumi media, have been targeted by government.
Mr. President, clemency is a belated thing. It's because of the public backlash. I would want the NCA and the ministry to be strongly guided by Article 296 of the 1992 Constitution. If yesterday we were allowed on the rooftops that it is not good to suspend or shut down, then today let us maintain the same principle and say that we would rather have an administrative engagement. Why should Asase Radio be denied the opportunity to broadcast? Why? Why will Wontumi be denied opportunity? Why is Wontumi suffering? Why is Wontumi suffering? Why is Wontumi suffering? What has Wontumi done? What at all has Wontumi done?
And as for His Excellency the President, I'm surprised that you will say that he is being magnanimous because of public backlash. When did the suspensions take place? And when did that public backlash occur that I sitting here haven't heard? When did that public backlash occur? The suspension occurred at what time of the day? At 10 a.m. this morning. And the clemency came at 12, within 2 hours. Who could have exercised such public backlash that His Excellency the President will be magnanimous to the extent that he is being?
The Communications Minister, Sam George, has urged all these radio stations to take advantage of the 30-day amnesty to correct the infractions to prevent a total shutdown after the expiration of the ultimatum. From Parliament House here in Accra, I am James Savage for Joy News.
Away from Parliament, a teenage candidate sitting for this year's Basic Education Certificate examination has made a determined return to continue writing her papers a day after delivering a baby at the Asienua Presby School Exam Center in the Ashanti region. Joy News' Irabna Kwe tells us the story and brings us more details.
The girl, who had reportedly been out of school for weeks due to her pregnancy, was convinced by her head teacher to take part in the exams. But during the ICT paper on Monday, she asked to be excused to use the washroom. It was there that she went into labor. A policewoman escorting her quickly raised the alarm. She got support from community members who helped her deliver safely in one of the offices at the exam center.
If you run on a banana, now any say run, who saw by Obira crash or betro.
She's my landlord's daughter. We saw her coming to write the exam. We saw her again use the washroom and she couldn't walk when she came out. I realized she was in labor. I rushed there and it was true. The baby's head was coming, so we assisted. We went there to assist her and the baby was born. We can't cut an umbilical cord unless a doctor. She wasn't prepared before coming, so we were using dusters. They brought a cloth. We put the baby on her stomach, wrapped her in a cloth and put her in a car. I called her mom to inform her of what had happened.
The
head pastor in charge of Asienua Presby Church, Reverend Kennedy Opoku, intervened and rushed the girl to a private hospital due to the absence of health workers in government hospitals.
I thought it expedient to send her to the hospital instead of letting those who are around to come to her aid. Since nurses are on strike, so we thought it wise to go straight to the private hospital so that they will attend to her. On arrival, they just came to the car and then they helped her out.
Despite the ordeal, the young mother returned Tuesday morning to continue with the rest of her papers. School authorities, prioritizing her safety and dignity as a minor, denied any media interaction. Answering to the question as to whether provisions are made in cases of similar situation, the Deputy PRO for the Ghana Education Service, Elizabeth Mafu, who has served in the Mamponten district for over 15 years, said,
for the time I've been working as an officer in the GS, no. This is my first time of observing such thing. Yesterday, we thought today she couldn't make it to the exams hall, but fortunately, today he is here to write the exams.
Officials say the teenage mother is in stable condition and arrangements are being made to ensure her comfort and safety throughout the remaining days of the examination. Reporting for Joy News, Irabna Akwe Kumase.
Well, today is day 3 of the examination. Of course, you want to stay with us because we'll bring you details of that. Now, in other stories, the Dobil Health Center, established 15 years ago, as a community-based health planning service, CHIPS compound, is now in dire need of support. In response to the crisis, the people of Dobil, led by the chief of the area, Na Abdullahi Osman, are mobilizing monetary and material support to construct a maternity ward and other essential facilities. Join us, Upper West Regional Correspondent Rafiq Salam reports from Wa.
Dobil, one of the 12 recognized traditional suburbs in the Wa municipality. It is home to the once famous Achampong quarters and overlooks the Wa airport. It has a population of 24,952 people. A community-based health planning and services CHIPS compound was established in the area in 2007. 6 years later, it was upgraded to the status of a health center. Despite its elevation, very little change regarding its infrastructure. It has now been overstretched to its elastic limit owing to the growing population of the area. Adebra Michael, a physician assistant and in charge of the Dobil Health Center, conducted me around the facility.
So the table here is where we take our vital signs. I'm talking about the BP, the weight, the temperature, and whatnot. This is where we take them. Once that is established, whether the person is coming for ANC services or OPD services is determined from here. So if the fellow is coming for ANC services, PNC, then the fellow comes to this particular place. This is the ANC plus family planning unit. And so this is where the midwives do the consultation. This is where they do their palpation for ANC services for the department. Now you can see that the room is not enough because this place originally is a CHIP compound. And so we don't even have nurses station. We don't have where the nurses will have to sit and where the clients will have to sit. So all of them is happening in this place because of lack of space.
The lying-in ward, which also serves as a maternity ward, is for both sexes. Simple put, there is no respect for privacy here as all patients are crammed in here.
For lack of space, this is where we detain our newly born mothers as well as OPD emergencies that needs to be detained before referring to other higher facilities. And so we do not have any other place. So we have both male and female clients as well as new mothers who are just put into bed all here in this place. So this is our detention room for all sort of cases. Like I was telling you, you see that we have folders even on the floor because the space is not there. So storage of folders is an issue that we are challenged with. So over here is the labor room. And so this is where we receive our mothers who come to deliver. As you can see, my midwives, despite the strike, they are here working to make sure that the people are not left out in terms of healthcare delivery. And so we have 2 beds, but the actual fact is that one of them is functioning. This is the only functional labor bed, but this one is not functioning. And so after delivering the mother, the resuscitation takes place at this table where they are now, and the records of the client and the baby are done on this table.
Some civil society organizations are calling for reforms in national policies to include family planning and safe-sex education, arguing that abstinence-only education is failing to reduce adolescent pregnancies. They cite restrictive laws, low funding, and gaps in reproductive health education as major obstacles to tackling teenage pregnancies and child marriages in Ghana. The country's teenage pregnancy rate is 15.2%, with Savannah and Ashanti regions most affected. And Emmanuel Bright-Kweku attended a regional workshop on sexual reproductive health rights in Ghana and filed this report.
Teenage pregnancy continues to be on the rise in Ghana. From a national average of 14.2% in 2014, the 2022 Demographic and Health Survey reports a 1% increase in nearly a decade. The Savannah, Ashanti and Northeast regions top the list of teenage pregnancy rates, recording 26% and 24% respectively. The worrying trend has been attributed to failed strategies, including the Ghana Education Service sole policy on preaching abstinence. At the Ashanti Regional Workshop on Sexual Reproductive Health Rights in Ghana, stakeholders noted strategies adopted to tame the growing menace are failing to yield the needed results. Henrietta Ofori-Atta is Advocacy and Youth Coordinator at Mary Stopes International.
There is a fuss about when young people receive information about their reproductive health, they become promiscuous, but there is age-appropriate information. There are young girls who are abused and can't even talk to their parents about it because of fear, or because the other person is threatening them, or because they don't even know that it's an abuse and they have to even speak about it. Okay, so the government should be concerned about some of these issues. Teaching young people about their reproductive health is not telling them to go and have sex.
Ghana reaffirmed its dedication to improving sexual reproductive health through contraceptive access and utilization under the 2030 Family Planning Commitment. Ashanti Regional Head of the Gender Department, Amanyanta Boateng, is advocating for reforms in sexual education policy in schools.
The issue of still giving them the talks, the issue of still sensitizing them will be the prime thing you have to do. Even before, when it gets to that extreme, you think of giving out a family planning service.
The growing menace is a potential bane to Ghana's socio-economic growth and national development. Population policy analyst at Development Advocacy Initiative Africa, Dr. Godfred Bona Nkansa, wants frantic efforts to clamp down on the canker.
Currently, our median age as a country is 20.9. So we are significantly outside the belt of development, accelerated development. It's not therefore enough to keep all the focus on job creation. It's fantastic, but pay attention to family planning. Pay attention to family planning. Let the families be capacitated to have the numbers they can take care of.
For Joy News, my name is Emmanuel Bright Kweku.
Amid growing concerns about youth migration across Africa, a global conference in Accra is turning the spotlight on the stories behind the statistics. The African Child and Youth Migration Conference is calling on government to stem the movement of young people in search of better opportunities abroad. Joy News' Valentina Semenyo was at the event and filed this report.
More than a gathering, the conference was a global call to action guided by African vision and voices. It provided a platform to share stories of resilience and hope, underscoring the need for data-driven, compassionate policies reflecting the realities for young migrants. Former government statistician and chair of the Ghana Statistical Service, Dr. Grace Bediako, appealed to government to focus on children and youth on the move to raise awareness and strengthen data systems for lasting solutions.
What the network is doing is to get attention focused on the children, child migrants, and the youth. And the idea is when you conduct a survey, you would want to hear from them. So the issue of the network is to direct attention not only of statisticians, researchers, policymakers, development practitioners to focus on child migrants, because as the UN SDGs indicate, all indicators should really be disaggregated to the extent possible by sex, age, migrant status, which is key, because once you change your usual residence, there is some settling to do. Your normal routines may change, and that may affect your own life and livelihood.
From the University of Calgary, Dr. Alicius Maduforo noted that research must go beyond awareness. It must trigger meaningful policy change.
There is lack of empirical data in relation to children and youth, and data that could inform a policy that can actually make impact in our society. So one of the aims of the African Child and Youth Migration Network is actually to generate this data as well as present it in a way that the policymakers can make use of it to make impact in our countries in Africa. So we need to harmonize this to be able to compare our data as well as present it in a way that it will inform policy as well as programs that are being done in these various countries.
The African Child Youth Migration Conference serves as a platform for uniting experts.
Apologies for the bad sound there, but in other stories, amid growing global calls for meaningful youth participation in climate activism, many young people continue to encounter significant barriers. These challenges include limited access to funding, lack of institutional support, and inadequate representation in key decision-making spaces. Although youth are often at the forefront of grassroots climate action, their efforts are frequently hindered by systemic exclusion and insufficient resources. As a result, their potential to drive innovative, community-based climate solutions remains underutilized. And my colleague, Maxwell Akloboto, was at the United Youth Initiative for Africa's Green Skills Readiness Program, reports for Joy News.
With growing calls for increased youth participation in climate activism, many young people still face challenges related to inclusion and access to support needed to implement initiatives that advance the cause. Speaking at the Green Skills Readiness Program, Hajara Guba, a representative from the German embassy, highlighted how many youth continue to be sidelined in the crucial fight.
The youth in Ghana are mostly left out, especially when it comes to climate policy integration and implementation. Most often, decisions about climate activities in Ghana, which involve the youth, unfortunately, the youth are not involved. Decision makers, especially government, just focus on their priorities, leaving out the youth.
Ernest Berima, an entrepreneur who produces charcoal briquettes from coconut husk, lamented the numerous obstacles he faces from authorities who, in his view, should be creating a more supporting environment for those working towards climate action. However, due to the hardship imposed by these challenges, he was forced to let go 30 of his 35 employees, significantly impacting his business and the livelihoods of many.
And once again, the challenge that we are going through is compliance. For you to get a certificate to operate as a startup in this country is very difficult. Mine, for instance, I needed EPA certificate. They came to do assessment as a startup. They were charging me 10,000 Ghana cedis. I need to get that certificate before I go to Energy Commission. They are going to also charge you over 5,000 Ghana cedis. If you're a startup as a beginner and a young graduate, how are you going to get this money for you to operate? I've sacked over 30 workers now. Out of the 35? 35, I've sacked 30.
Ernest also called on relevant stakeholders to provide support that could make their work easier and more favorable.
We urge the government and then these regulatory bodies to help us, we the startups.
The youth remain helpful for greater inclusion in climate activism in the days ahead. Maxwell Aklobeto's report for Joy News.
Dobil Business Update is next with Benjamin Akapu.
It's a pleasure to serve you your business updates, and we start off with our currency market for today. Let's dig into our stories now and expect the prices of some foodstuffs on the market to start dropping by some significant margins from next month. This is the strong performance on the back of the strong performance and pickup in production for the agric sector, which will start impacting the market. Now, the sector, for the first time in a long time, posted the highest growth rate of 6.6%. This is the highest posted by any of the sectors for the first 3 months of this year. Edward Karewe is former General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union.
Well, it takes time for major sectors like this, when they begin to recover, to bring about the effect that will go with it. You know, it's like when you plant, you know, you increase your production. You cannot immediately benefit from the output, but it will be realized in the future. So the impact on prices would soon come. But around this time, June, July, you will now begin to see prices will come down. Among you, prices of foodstuffs is not only mainly about fiscal production. It also has to do with other linkages, which people would link it to the city-dollar relationship and so on. Now that all those factors are being aligned, then certainly if you go to the marketplace, prices will begin to come down.
Now, Ghana has been ranked 8th among Africa's top 10 manufacturing countries, according to a report by the African Exponent, an analytical business information source for entrepreneurs and potential investors in Africa. The next report has more on that.
The report stated that Ghana's long-term focus on value-added manufacturing in agriculture and cocoa has transformed its industrial landscape. Again, the One District, One Factory initiative has fostered small and medium enterprises SME growth, while established firms like Casapreco and Funmilk extend Ghana's manufacturing reach internationally. According to the report, within the last decade, a few countries have stood out for hosting the largest manufacturing companies in Africa, both in scale and influence. South Africa came first, followed by Egypt and Nigeria in second place and third place respectively, Morocco fourth, Kenya fifth, Algeria 6th, Ethiopia 7th, Tunisia 9th, and Zambia 10th followed suit. The report stated that South Africa is Africa's most industrialized nation. Its advanced infrastructure, diversified industrial base, and global partnerships, especially in the automotive and chemical sectors, make it the continent's undisputed manufacturing giant in 2025. The leading sectors are automotive, steel, chemicals, and food processing.
Let's take a deep dive into the commodities exchange now. Well, thank you for staying for your business updates. And in the spirit of supporting small businesses, I'd like to say thank you to Mudasiru of Zero Africa. If you see me clad in this beautiful shirt this morning, it's courtesy of Mudasiru, Zero Africa. He has some interesting packages ahead of Father's Day. I'll be telling you about that in the course of the show. But for now, let's lean right into sports. And what can you expect? We're bringing you an exclusive conversation in respect of Ghana's rising black stars forward, Christopher Bonsu Ba. You want to stick and stay? We'll be back with that. you.